everybody, welcome back to Andertons TV. I have got Digital John with us today. I'm so sorry, that I hope that name doesn't stick. And we are comparing again a couple of multi-effects units. Actually, this time round, we've got something new, something a little older, but they're kind of in a similar price bracket, which is why we're shooting them out. Do you want to tell us what we've got, Mr. John?
Yes, so over here on the left, Ampero by Hotone, a smaller, sort of more compact touchscreen modeler. Over here, we've got Zoom G5n, your more sort of traditional looking, bigger unit with a lot more dials, but also, you know, a lot more hands-on, not with a touchscreen. Different schools of thought for the, you know, the modeler people, I think. Yeah.
Okay, so this is actually a kind of a two videos in one shootout here, because both the Ampero and the Zoom G5 have baby brothers. This one's called a G3 and this one is the Ampero 1, which are basically the same engines in smaller units with less switches. So again, if you like the sound of either of these, but just think, oh, is there something a little bit more affordable? Yes, there probably is, and hopefully this video will still help you choose. What are the headlines, Mr. John, about sort of, you know, what each one kind of does top level?
So the Ampero Hotone got a lot more in the box, I believe. In terms of effects, I think this has got around 240. The Zoom, referring to my notes, 70. Okay, so that's quite a big difference. But again, we've talked about this with modelers.
Once you get past 20 effects, everything else is some weird edge case that you'll almost certainly never use. But yes, I get it. Tons more in there, not so many in there. Still loads.
Yeah, cool. And then the same with cabs. That's got, I think, 16 cabs and around, I think 16 or 17 amps and cabs. This, how many does this have? This has, 64, okay? So a lot more, which, you know, for the size of it, it's quite something really. In terms of IRs, if you like, you know, you've got an attachment to an IR you want to use for all your modelers, this can import them in. You can have custom IRs with that. You can't with the Zoom G5. So for those of you who do use IRs, I don't particularly, because, you know, I just like what's in the unit. It just keeps things a lot simpler. So just a small point. The other thing, obviously the main thing said earlier, this is a touchscreen, which is sort of a lot easier to sort of point at and do something with, which is what I like about modelers with those. This, you've sort of got to twiddle a bit and find and click through.
This is old school. The Zoom G5's been out for a few years now, and it almost feels a bit like, if people are familiar with it, almost like a sort of a more advanced version of like a Boss ME80. This feels like lots of pedals at my fingertips that I can kind of chain up and decide. This feels like almost like a plug-in in a little hardware device. Definitely pros and cons to both. You know, you're probably right. You might not necessarily, I think if you're going to go out and gig this, you want to be fully prepared that you don't need to change anything on the fly. This one you might find a bit simpler. But let's start with a bit like we did in the previous video. We're going to do something clean with a Fender amplifier, something slightly dirty with a Marshall amplifier, something really dirty with a modern high gain amplifier. Going to add a couple of effects in as we go along. And as we've said again in previous videos, we're really, I guess, a little bit deeper than maybe just touching the surface on this, but just bear in mind that, you know, with any of these multi-effects units, to get the best out of them, you've really got to read that manual and dive deep.
Absolutely.
So first shootout here is what the Ampero thinks a Fender Deluxe will sound like versus what the Zoom thinks a Fender Deluxe will sound like. All into our computer interface, so you know what you're hearing now has no coloration from an amplifier. You can of course use these with amplifiers if you want to, but that's not what you're hearing today. So John, take us away then please with a clean tone with a bit of reverb through the Ampero.
Sounds great.
Zoom, same thing.
Feel pretty close at the minute.
A bit darker sounding again, isn't it? The Zoom.
Yeah, a tiny bit.
It's funny, almost feels like in the last video we did as well, the newer technology has almost like a bigger dynamic range to the older technology, maybe. Let's jump in. So we got tube screamers that we've added. Again, it's quite a lot more intuitive how to turn effects on and off on the Zoom. On the Ampero, you've got to go into the settings and decide, you know, what you want these buttons to do and stuff, but we've messed around with that, and essentially this button here is going to turn a tube screamer off. So tube screamer on, or is that your compressor?
Yeah.
I apologise. Tube screamer on. Here we go. Okay, and we'll put the tube screamer on here. You just saw me back a little bit of the gain down off of the Zoom one because it did feel that we'd set it a bit higher than that, but let's do a quick jump between the two. There's still more. Can we gain up the tube screamer on that one a smidgen?
Say what, 20?
Say 30, something like that.
30.
Yeah, let's have a little listen. More again, maybe 50. It's just, again, it's a darkness thing that we're hearing from the Zoom, not necessarily better or worse, just a bit darker sounding. Let's add in our compressor as well, so we have a little bit more on the...
Yep.
So this is a really typical kind of guitar player's rig, bit of compression, bit of tube screamer into a clean amplifier. You know, you do a lot of gigs basically with that setup, couldn't you?
Definitely.
So let's have a little listen to this.
All right.
And then the Zoom. Okay. For me personally, we're not using noise gates, by the way, which is why I'm turning the noisy effects off, because it's just annoying in the background, but they both have got noise gates in them if you want to use them. Round one, I think, to the Ampero.
Yeah, this is the more modern unit, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah, so I think we're seeing a trend of the modern units have some sort of bigger bandwidth of frequency they can get out, maybe.
Like that, yeah.
And like, yeah, the top end and low end, but specifically the top end's what I notice, in here at least. That sort of high end fizz you get from sitting next to an amp.
You might actually, in fairness, lose some of that once you go into a normal guitar amplifier, because obviously the speaker cabinet won't have necessarily the frequency response to actually reproduce some of that higher end. But I do think into the monitors, we're definitely hearing that. We're going to move on to the Marshall now. Essentially, the Hotone works from a touchscreen, as John was saying here, where you're basically pressing buttons and pressing edit buttons and then choosing. It's relatively intuitive, isn't it, this one?
Yeah.
The Zoom confused me at the beginning a little bit, but once you get into it, you sort of work it out. So this kind of thin, slightly old-fashioned looking LCD screen at the top here shows me the chain. You'll see that there are 3 elements of the chain lit up here, and then another element of the chain that's not lit up. And what it's essentially going to do, I need to use these scroll buttons here, and you can kind of see that lit up bit moving across. And then what's happening is these 4 blocks here relate to whatever's lit up on the top. And once you kind of work that out, it actually becomes incredibly simple and intuitive to go, oh, right, okay, so if I want to edit, for example, my reverb, I just need to make sure that the reverb bank is lit up somewhere. So now it's lit up, and I can see here, here's my reverb, and I've got all my parameters ready to go from the knobs here. So actually, from a point of view of going, yep, I'm at a gig, I need to change something quickly,
right.
I actually think the Zoom, you'd get to where you needed to change faster than you would on the Ampero.
Yeah, I think there's definitely like a sort of grammar you have to figure out with each modeler. They each have their own way around, and it's just what you're into. Yeah.
Okay, so anyway, the next sound that you hear is going to be some sort of Marshall Plexi kind of thing into a 412 with much the same kind of tube screamer type setting. So back in a mo. So we've got our Marshall settings now. This is called an MS1959, so clearly like a 100-watt super lead kind of thing. This doesn't really have something that's obviously a 100-watt super lead setting, so we've gone for 50 plus, Marshall 50 plus it says, which I think is kind of, it's roughly in the right ballpark. So this is classic sort of 70s rock Marshall, not super high gain, just dirty fatness. Again, just with the reverb, and we'll put a tube screamer on over the top. So we have chosen a Marshall, kind of vintage 70s Marshall vibe. The setting we're using on the Zoom is called an MS1959, so quite clearly a nod towards the 1959 100-watt super lead vibe. There isn't really a preset within the Ampero that was obviously that amplifier. We tried, it goes from the Marshall 45 setting, which I'm guessing is JTM 45, through 3 different versions of a Marshall 50, which we've used one of, we've used 50 plus, and then it goes into JCM 800 territory. So anyway, 50 plus from the Ampero versus 1959 on here, for that kind of, you know, mid-crunch 70s classic rock tone, just a bit of reverb. Take it away. And then the same again, but over here is the Zoom.
Nice.
Do some Hendrixy vibey stuff. Winner, chicken dinner. Can we have a tube screamer over the top of that, please?
Certainly.
Oh, bit of noise coming now. Same again over here. Got a preference? Goodness me.
Still this guy, I think.
Yes, I think I'm probably with you on that front. I think the noise reduction just needs to be turned up a bit more, but then of course you've got that. I have a real love-hate relationship with noise reduction. It's like, it's nice when it kicks in and it gets rid of the noise, but when you've got that kind of, you've just finished playing and it makes the noise go, I hate that. So I think for live, I'd just rather have the noise all the time and just get on with it.
I think, funnily enough, the mix of that sound.
What with the?
At like high volumes, it probably sound better live with that mid thing. Like this is probably too scoop. If that was loud, like it's pretty loud in here, but something about, especially with that, sounds a bit waspy.
Yeah, that's because I quite like that. Anyway, What do you think? Most importantly, so finally in this demonstration, we will find something very modern. In a previous video, we used a dual rectifier. Maybe we'll try and find something different, but let's see what they got, and we'll be back in a mo. For our final shootout, we have decided to Bogner it up all the way from Bogner Regis. We tried a diesel, but I must admit, Zoom's interpretation of a diesel and Ampero's interpretation of a diesel were very, very different. We didn't really think it was a sort of slightly pointless comparison. Did you even know that Vin Diesel made amplifiers?
Oh, I do now.
He was a Hollywood actor?
Yeah.
That's right. Okay, so Bogner versus Bogner into a Bogner 4x12, both mic'd with 57s and no other pedals. Here is, isn't Ampero some terrible Portuguese sort of pop opera singer? Or was that someone else? Pete will know. Who am I thinking of? Something sounds a bit like Ampero. But anyway, comment below.
You mean refuge in Spanish?
No, I know. Does it mean
Portuguese,
that? No,
yeah.
who's the singer? Something, a bear, something aero. Whatever.
Don't know. No.
For another day. Okay, come on then. Oh, right, and this is what Zoom thinks one sounds like.
Still pretty drastically different, those.
Very drastic. Well, not as drastically different as the diesel, but it's much darker.
Yeah.
More compressed, more kind of like what old-fashioned guitar effects sound like, I think, as opposed to the Ampero. Let's put the Tube Screamer on over the top and see what happens here. Bosh, here we go. Bosh! Right. Well, what do you think, everybody? What do you think, John?
What? Bear with.
Oh, I think I've turned it all off. I tried to
Sorry. Same thing. It's like it's compressed it into mids or something, and this is just got a bigger bandwidth. I keep on saying that, but it seems to be a theme with newer modelers.
Yes.
And how many years between these?
I want to say the Zoom G5 is at least 5 years old.
Right.
I'm turning all the volumes down.
Yeah.
Ah, that's better. Yeah, I've got to be honest with you. So the Zoom is a little bit cheaper, 50 quid cheaper. I kind of think the Zoom probably stands up much more if you don't want to use all the amp modeling and you just want to use it as a pedal board into an amplifier.
Yeah.
It's got which actually isn't really the demo that we've just done here, but maybe I'm pretty sure if you want to see some other demos of the Zoom stuff, I think we've done some earlier on the Andertons channel, or it may even have been when we were doing stuff on Rob Chapman's channel. But yeah, I just feel like this particular demo, which was largely about how did the amps sound, I just think you can tell the Ampero is from a generation of effects where that's much more what it's about.
Yeah. Right.
The Zoom, I think, some of the other stuff the Zoom does, got a little drum machine built into it, which you can use in conjunction with the looper, and it's probably good fun. It's obviously very chunky and robust and nicely laid out to use as a pedal board. But I do think this is maybe more like, I think I said it at the beginning, like an advanced version of a Boss ME80, whereas that feels to me like a sort of an affordable version of like a Neural or something,
Right.
you know, like that kind
Yeah.
of, it's just a different vibe or
That definitely has the functionality win, I think. But there's something about like getting amps dialed in right that I think will appeal to those sort of players with this. And this, again, has way more in it.
Yes.
I think it's got, 60? And that has about 15, 16?
Yes, of amp models.
amps,
Yeah,
right,
yeah. But there we go. So another good shootout there, John. And as we say at the end of every single one of these, okay, it's you've got 250, 300 pounds of your hard-earned paper round money. Which one of those two would you be plumping for?
Right now,
Yeah.
one closest.
It's the win for
The
the Ampero. Ding, ding. Okay, well, thank you for joining us for another episode on Andertons TV. We shall see you next time. Please like and subscribe and comment below on shootouts of effects units you would like John and I to do next time he's here. Anyway, good night